Okay, so in part 2 of this lesson, we're going to learn about using zero product property to solve quadratic equations when a is not equal to 1. Okay, so in this case, a is 2. Alright, so the same thing, we're going to start off by substituting 0 in for y. Okay, because we're solving, we want to set it equal to 0. So 0 is equal to 2x squared plus 5x minus 3. Okay, so remember when the coefficient is 2, we multiply the first term times the last. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. Okay, so we want two numbers that multiply to negative 6 and add up to the middle term, which is 5. Okay, so if I want positive 5, I can do 6 times negative 1 and then 6 plus negative 1. Okay? So if we remember from factoring that the first term here is going to stay the same, and then the middle term breaks apart into 6x and negative 1x. Okay, because 6 plus negative 1 is 5, and then the last term stays the same. Okay? So right here I am factoring the trinomial. Okay? Now from the next part, I'm going to find the greatest common factor and group. So I'm going to group here the first two and the second two and take out the greatest common factor from each. Remember that these are equal to 0. So I can take out 2x from the first, and I'll have left x plus 3. Okay, and in the second one, I want the same term to be x plus 3. So here I can take out negative 1, and then I will have x plus 3 left over in parentheses. Okay, from here, the outside term becomes 1, so 0 is equal to 2x minus 1, and then the one that's repeated is the second term. Okay, so now we have everything factored, and the last step is I need to solve for x. Okay, so the first one, 2x minus 1, is going to be equal to x. I'm sorry. It's going to be equal to 0. And then add 1 to both sides. 2x is equal to 1. Divide by 2. So x here is 1/2. Okay? In the second one, x plus 3 is equal to 0. Solve for x. X is equal to negative 3. Okay? So x is negative 3 or 1/2. I'm going to skip over this part right here, and I want us to try and check our understanding to make sure that we get it. Okay? So I'm going to do one more with you, part A, and then I'd like you to do part B and C on your own. Okay, so for part A, we already have it set equal to 0. So I want two numbers that multiply to negative 28. So multiply to negative 28 and add up to negative 3. Alright, so multiplying to 28, I can do 7 times 4. Okay, one of them has to be negative. I'm going to put the 7 negative because then I can do negative 7 plus 4, which is 3. So those are my two new terms. So, first term stays the same. I'm separating negative 3x to negative 7x and plus 4x. And then the last term stays the same, negative 14. After that, I'm going to group and take out the greatest common factor. So the greatest common factor from the first set, I can take out an x. That's the only thing I can take out. What's left over is 2x minus 7. And in the second grouping, I can take out the greatest common factor would just be 2. And then I have left over 2x minus 7. Okay? So the outer term, this is positive 2. So x plus 2 And then the one that's repeated is the next one. 2x minus 7 is going to be equal to 0. Last step is to set each part equal to 0. So I have x plus 2 equals 0. So x is negative 2. And then 2x minus 7 equals 0. X equals 7 over 2, okay, or 3.5. So there are your two answers for here. Okay, so at this point, please pause the video and try the next two. Okay, I'm going to try and erase a little bit here. Okay, so let's do part B. So I want two numbers that multiply to equal 36 and add up to be negative 20. Okay, so two numbers, I could do 6 times 6, but that won't work. What about 18 times 2? Okay, I need negative 20, so I can make them both negative. So I'm going to use negative 18 and negative 2. Okay, so breaking apart, I have 3x squared. Break apart the second term to negative 18x and negative 2x. And the last one stays the same, which is equal to 0. Okay, so from here I'm going to group and take out the greatest common factor, which is 3x. I have left x minus 6. And here I can take out negative 2. And I'll have x minus 6 left over. Okay, so from here my first term is 3x minus 2. And my second one, which is the repeat, which is equal to 0. Finally, set each part equal to 0. 3x minus 2 is equal to 0. And also x minus 6 is equal to 0. So now I have 3x is equal to 2. So here x is 2/3. And here x is 6. Okay? Alright, and then let's try the last part, number C. I'm going to erase here to make a little bit more room. So you notice that part C looks a little bit different. It's not already set equal to 0, so that's something that we're going to have to do. Okay, so here we have 8x squared plus 2x. I'm going to subtract 15 and bring it over to the left to be 0. Okay, so now it looks like A and B. So now I need two numbers that multiply together to be negative 15 times 8, which is negative 120. And then adding up to 2. Okay, so the numbers 12 times 10, and one of them has to be negative. I need a positive 2, so 12 plus negative 10 will give me positive 2. Okay, so from here, I'm going to rewrite 8x squared plus 12x minus 10x minus 15, group, and then I'm going to take out the greatest common factor, which in this case is 4x. I'll have 2x plus 3. And in the next term I can take out negative 2. And then I'll have... Sorry, I can take out negative 5. Let me erase that. Negative 5. And then I'll have 2x plus 3 left over. Sorry, it's kind of hard to see. Okay, so in another color, let me try. The first term, 4x minus 5. And the second term, 2x plus 3, is going to be equal to 0. Okay, setting each one equal to 0, 4x minus 5 equals 0. Okay, so x is equal to 5 over 4. And then setting the second part equal to 0, 2x plus 3 equal to 0. X is going to be negative 3 over 2. Okay, so here we have x is 5/4 or negative 3 over 2. Alright, so in example 5, we need to check to make sure that we don't have common terms already. Okay, so there's one extra step for these problems where we first need to see if we can divide everything by the same term. So in the first example, I see that they all have a factor of 3. So I can take out 3 from everything. Then I'll have x squared minus 4x minus 12, and that's going to be equal to 0. Okay, so in the first step, I did greatest common factor. Okay, so now it's going to be like a problem that we've done before. Okay, so now I just have the regular 1 coefficient, so I need two numbers that multiply to negative 12 and add up to negative 4. So those two numbers, I could do negative 6 times 2, and then I could also do negative 6 plus 2. Okay, so rewriting, I have 3, and then I have x minus 6, x plus 2, which is equal to 0. Okay, and finally, setting each part equal to 0, x minus 6 is equal to 0. So now I have x is equal to 6. And then also, bring it over here, x plus 2 is equal to 0. So x is equal to negative 2. Okay, so just to go over the steps again, we did greatest common factor right here. Then we factored the trinomial. And finally, we solved for x. Okay, so I'd like you to pause the video for a moment and try A and B. Okay, so for A and B, the first thing that we should do is see if they have a greatest common factor, and they do. We can take out a 2 from each term. So then I'll just have x squared minus 5x plus 6 is equal to 0. Okay, now I need to factor the trinomial. Two numbers that multiply to 6 and add up to negative 5. Okay, so I could try 6 times 1, but that won't work. What about negative 2 times negative 3? And then I could do negative 2 plus negative 3. Okay, so 2 is on the outside. I have negative 2 and negative 3, so x minus 2, x minus 3 is equal to 0. Okay, set each part equal to 0. So x minus 2 equals 0, so x is 2. And x minus 3 is equal to 0, so x is 3. Okay, so x is 2 or 3. Okay, I'm just going to erase a little bit over here to make room. And let's try part B. Okay, so we see that we can divide everything here by 5, so I'm going to factor out a 5. Then I'll have left x squared minus 10x plus 16 is equal to 0. Okay, so make my little chart up here. I need two numbers that multiply to 16 and add up to negative 10. Okay, so 8 times 2 is 16. But I need negative, so I'm going to make them both negative. And I can do negative 8 plus negative 2. So, first term, x minus 8, x minus 2 is equal to 0. Finally, taking each term, setting equal to 0. So in this case, x is equal to 8, or setting x minus 2 equal to 0, x is also equal to 2. Alright, so let's think about when we might see this written in words. Okay, so we want to write out each quadratic equation from the description. So whatever is written, we want to try and write it out. So if x is added to x squared, the sum is 42. What values for x would make this true? Okay, so let's read the first part and try and write out what this means. X is added to x squared. Okay, so x plus x squared. The sum is 42. So when we add them together, it equals 42. What values for x would make this true? Okay, so now we need to solve for x. So the first thing that I see here is that it's a little bit out of order because I want it x squared, x, and then a number. So I want to set it equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 42. So I want x squared first because that's the order. X squared plus x minus 42. Okay, now this looks a little bit more like something that we've been doing. Okay, so let's try and factor from here. So I need two numbers that multiply to negative 42 and add up to 1. Okay, so 7 times 6 is equal to 42. And one of them has to be negative. Okay, I want positive 1, so the 6 is going to be negative. So I have 7 plus negative 6 would give me 1. Okay, so when I factor, I have x plus 7 and x minus 6 is equal to 0. Okay, take each part and set it equal to 0. X plus 7 is 0, so then x has to be negative 7. Here, x minus 6 is equal to 0, so x has to be 6. Okay, so x is negative 7 or 6. Alright, erasing here. Oh, it won't let me erase everything. Okay, so let's try the next one. If 3x is subtracted from x squared, the difference is 10. Okay, so 3x is being taken away from x squared. Okay, so I'm going to write x squared first. This shows that the 3x is being taken away from x squared, and the difference is 10, so the answer is 10. Okay, so setting our equation equal to 0, x squared minus 3x minus 10 is equal to 0. Okay, next step is to factor, multiply to negative 10, add to negative 3. Okay, so 5 times 2 is 10, and I needed the 3 to be negative, so negative 5 plus 2. So let's go ahead and factor. X minus 5, because I'm negative 5, and x plus 2 equal to 0. Set each part equal to 0. So here x is 5. Or set this part equal to 0. X is negative 2. Okay, so here x is 5, or it's negative 2. Alright, so for the check your understanding part, I'd like you to go ahead and start this in class, and I'll come around with the answer sheet for this.